Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Sandeman Street podcast, a podcast covering Dundee and Dundee United from fans of both clubs. Like in episode 1, I'm joined by Martin. Martin, how are you today?
Too bad, Andrew, not too bad. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. So
Good,
we're
good.
going to see how this goes. Last time was obviously our first go. Seemed to get a lot of good feedback from the folk who listened. The folk who listened being friends who have been bribed.
Thank you very much to one and all.
We'll get right into it. Steven Pressley appointed Dundee manager. Now, when we last spoke, we went through the list of favourites, or what the bookies were saying would be the favourites, and we spoke about Stephen Robinson, Sean Maloney, etc., etc. Steven Pressley was not a name on that list. Now, it is a very Dundee appointment. When it first happened, I don't even know how I felt. I was shocked more than anything. As I've gotten used to the idea, I still don't know how I feel. It's very, very strange. He's not even got an assistant manager yet. It's all very bizarre. What do you think?
It really is. Presley has entered the building. What can we say about that? Talk about a surprise. I mean, I don't think anybody that is a Dundee fan would have seen that one coming. I certainly never. As a United fan, I was online and I was seeing the mention of Steven Pressley, and I'm thinking, what the on about Steven Pressley for? And then I scrolls down and there's the Dundee tweet, Steven Pressley announced, and I'm thinking, oh my God, where did they pull that one from? And talk about out of the left field, eh? Like who could have saw that coming? Like you say, I'm looking at the manager list, the next Dundee manager odds, and he's not even down at the bottom with the likes of Neil Critchley and Tony Mowbray. So where they've pulled that one out of, I don't know. How do you think that's going to bode for this coming season?
Well, it could only be anything but anything but shite, really, because every single person I've seen tipped doing a Scottish Premier League prediction list has got us to get relegated in 12th place.
Really?
And that's when you've got Livingston who are signing boys like Zach Rudden. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it could... anything's a bonus if that's what you're going by. So, yeah, I don't know what to think of it. They've brought in a boy... So Steven Pressley is going to be the head coach, so it's going to be a slightly different role. And they've brought in a guy called David Longwell, who is going to be the technical manager. Now, that's something that I've never heard before. He's going to work alongside Gordon Strachan, who's the technical director, as well as Pressley, obviously. It's a very, very strange one. The boy David Longwell, they had an interview with him on YouTube a few weeks back. I like the sound of him. He's been around. He's done good jobs in a lot of different places. So if that's anything to go by, then yeah, it could be a good thing. But I think it's going to be one of them ones where time will tell. It's from the people that you're seeing when he was the Falkirk manager, speaking very highly of him, and he's been down in England for a while. He's been kind of out of our eye. If you don't really keep in touch with lower league football in England, then you'll not really see what he's been doing. But I've seen, like, there was one stat doing the rounds on social media that he had 6 jobs and been sacked from 6 different clubs, and it's just not the case. He got headhunted from Falkirk to go to Coventry. So,
I mean, he was doing quite a good job at Falkirk when he was the manager there. That was just sort of around the time when I was getting into watching United. My first season was the 09-10 season, which was a brilliant season for reasons that we'll not go into for your sake. But I remember playing Falkirk, and I can't remember if it was that season or the season that they got relegated, but they actually looked not too bad. Team under Steven Pressley, and obviously he was headhunted to go down south, and I think just like a lot of players and like a lot of managers, he's went down south to take on the big boys of the English leagues, and he's been humbled a wee bit. And I think he actually did say that in his press conference at Dundee. He went down there, cock of the walk, thinking he was going to take England by storm, and it just didn't really work out for him. And he's been at a few clubs. I think according to this, it looks like he's actually been at a foreign club as well, Paphos in Greece. I don't think he was there for very long, mind you, but it's coming up as one of the teams that he was at as a manager. So he's he's even had a little foreign venture, which obviously hasn't went too well for him. But you never know. He's back in the country, in the league where he made a name for himself. He might make a name for himself again. You never know.
well, it's actually funny that you should say that. You know, the weird things that you remember. I'm absolutely positive that he signed Kevin Holt to go to that Paphos. positive. I'm sure Paphos is they're separate, I think.
Yeah.
And he signed Kevin Holt to go there when Kevin Holt left Dundee. But I mean, he was 3 years at Falkirk, Coventry, Fleetwood, Paphos, Carlisle, and now Dundee. When he left Falkirk to go to Coventry, we all think Coventry as in Coventry now, but they weren't. I think Coventry were probably in League Two at that time, and they were a bit of a basket case. From what I could remember, he was there when they were getting kicked out their ground and they were having to play elsewhere and stuff. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, I think it's got the potential to work. It also has the potential to not work. And the problem with what we've got is that the general negativity about it is that if he doesn't start well, if we get knocked out that League Cup group, or if we don't do well in that League Cup group, if he starts the season badly, it's just going to turn, isn't it?
Yeah, the fans will be on him and they'll be on the club right from the off. If you don't do well in that League Cup group stage, the fans will not take that very well, which is understandable. No. And do you think the fact that he's an ex-Arab has a bit of an influence on his bad reception? I mean, the last Arab that he's had in the driving seat obviously didn't do too well for you. Is there bad memories coming back to the forefront of your mind?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, it was a while until I actually realised that he actually did used to play for United. I didn't know that, but it wasn't the first thing I thought about because it was that long ago. When you in my opinion, when you think Steven Pressley, you think Hearts.
Yeah.
So it's, I don't think, for me anyway, it's the whole he played for United 30 years ago has anything to do with it, but I'm sure there'll probably be some Dundee fans out there who think that.
Yeah.
But people forget that Tony Docherty was a coach at United for years.
Totally.
So, I mean, if you're going to not employ people because they played or coached or whatever at United, then you're really hamstringing yourself. We're not the old firm. We've signed players who played for each other. So,
and this whole notion of players and managers and backroom staff that are maybe they've spent years at this club in the past, so they're not going to give it their all. That's nonsense. You see that with players all the time. And I'll use Simon Murray as an example. Die-hard Dundee fan, but when he was at Tannadice, he would give you 110% every week. You know, these guys, it's their job, and they will perform for the club who's paying their money regardless of who they support.
Yeah, absolutely. As you say, Simon Murray, when he was at United, I remember regularly, if United had scored the goal, he was running in front of the Dundee fans, giving it the get it right up. Yeah, So, yeah, you're absolutely right. But moving on, because I know that the first two podcasts we've started with Dundee. That's not on purpose, it's just that the Dundee have had the biggest news on the times of recording, but yeah, we'll move on. United in the Europa Conference League. I think I've maybe actually got that wrong. I think it's now only just the Conference League. They've drawn a team from Luxembourg. What are you reckoning?
Yeah, we've got a team from Luxembourg, and what I'm reckoning is that if we don't get past them, then there's really not much hope in trying, really. FC Una Strassen from Luxembourg, they finished fourth in the Luxembourg Premier League last season, whatever you would call that league. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, I mean, I hate to use the word no disrespect, but really, we should be absolutely, taking them for a walk every day of the week, you know what I mean? I think they play in a wee stadium that's only got 1,500 capacity, although the game is not going to be played there, from what I've been led to believe. It's apparently going to be getting played at their national stadium, but again, depending on what you see online, I've seen people saying that national stadium's been requested by, I think, 3 other clubs for the same dates, so God knows what's happening there. I've also sort of seen rumours that there's a meeting ongoing at the club tonight, at United that is, to sort of find out exactly what's going on with the away fixture there. But yeah, I mean, this is a club that was founded in 1922, so they're just over 100 years old, and they only played their first European tie last season, and that was against a Finnish side called KUPS. Now, that's not actually what they're called. It is a name, but I'm not even going to try and pronounce it because it'll be total butchery. They drew 0-0 with them at the home game and got beat 5-0 away. So, I mean, yeah, you're thinking that should be a guaranteed walk in the park. But it's football, is it? Nothing's a guarantee, especially with United. So, yeah, we'll wait and see. But no, it should be getting through them, no bother, and getting to the next round.
I mean, if United don't win that, I'd be amazed. So what we're probably better doing is speaking about who they would potentially draw in the next round. Do you know who potential opponents could be if they were to?
Honestly, I've not even looked that far ahead, to be honest with you. I've just not seen those lists. I've got no doubt they are going about on social media, sort of in various places, but it's not a list I've seen. I would imagine there will be some teams that are of a sort of higher standard, sort of as you progress through these rounds, you've got the better teams that come in at later stages, and the teams that have earned their way into that particular round. So, yeah, there's definitely exciting ties to look forward to if and when we beat Unastrassen.
Well, I'm pretty sure somebody who is a friend in Sports United told me that potentially one of them's AZ Alkmaar. So
Yeah.
I think that would send shivers down your spine, in
Yeah.
all honesty.
Enough said on that, I think.
I don't think they're the same team as they were, though. They've lost quite a few players.
You know what? They did lose quite a few players. A couple of seasons ago when we played them, they went on to have an absolutely brilliant season in the Eredivisie. I don't think they won it. I think they came second, but I think they went unbeaten in that league for quite some time. But they were a force to be reckoned with that season. And in all honesty, I think we got them on an off night at Tannadice, to be quite frank with you. But yeah, even if they are worse than what they were, I would still like to avoid them just for the mental pain that it would bring seeing them again.
Well, if you think off the top of your head, I mean, I can't remember who played in what game and whatnot, but they had the boy Pavlidis, who's the Greek striker. He plays for them. He's at Benfica now.
Yeah.
Reinders, who's at he was at AC Milan. Has he moved now? And Kerkez, who's just about to sign for Liverpool from Bournemouth. All three of them played for them at that time. So,
and they did have a guy playing. I can't remember his name, but I'm sure he was a guy that had played in the Premier League down south. But I cannot remember his name. Up at Tannadice, defender. What was his name?
Bruno Martins Indy.
Aye, Bruno Martins Indy. Aye. So, they were a team that were laden with talent back then. And like any team of that level, it's the same when you're a United fan, same with Dundee. You get a good season, and then the big boys come and steal all your talent away from you, and you're back to square one.
The usual story about being a provincial club, isn't it?
Yeah, great fun.
Well, since we've got the United's cakewalk in Luxembourg, we'll move on to Dundee in the Premier Sports Cup. I think that's still what it's called. It's had umpteen different names in the past few years, but after us sitting there, or me sitting in the last podcast slagging off Bonnyrigg Rose and their pitch and their ground, we've drawn Bonnyrigg Rose in their pitch and their ground.
What are the chances, eh?
They've confirmed, I think, that we're not actually going to play them there, because the ironic thing about the fact that they actually got relegated was because they got a 6-point deduction based on their pitch. They had a massive fundraising campaign, reached the target, I'm led to believe, to level out their pitch, but because they got the 6-point deduction, they finished bottom on goal difference and got relegated through the playoffs. So I don't even think it would matter anymore. I mean, obviously it would matter if they've got ambitions of coming up, which I'm sure they do, but I mean, it just doesn't sound very fair. But anyway, I think we're playing them at Whitehill Welfare's Gym. I can't remember the name of the stadium, but we've also drawn Airdrie for the 8th season in a row in a cup competition. We've got Alloa and we have Montrose. Now, I think everybody of a dark blue persuasion in Dundee was hoping that the Montrose game was going to be an away game on a Saturday so we can get a train day. Unfortunately, that's at home.
Yeah, Montrose, it's one of these ones that on a away day would have been quite good, get the train up there, into the pub for a few pints, but I think at Dens it'll be a fairly drab affair. I mean, I don't know what the attendances are like at Dens for the Premier Sports Cup, but certainly at Tannadice, we are quite well supported, but the Premier Sports, it just doesn't seem to draw the crowds, and I can understand that. You're playing in this group stage, you're playing against teams that are, you would have to say a lot of the teams that you do play are of a lower standard than what you really want to go and watch in a competitive game. So Montrose at home, it's one that you go to just out of the necessity of feeling that you've got to go.
Well, last season they played their home games at Brecon because they were still in the process of upgrading their pitch from the season before when they couldn't get a game on anytime there was light rain. But they're playing Airdrie and Montrose at Dens. The last maybe 2 or 3 seasons that they've played at Dens and had the Premier Sports Cup games there, they've only opened one stand. They open one stand for the home fans, and so the 2 stands behind the goal effectively, one for home fans, one for away fans. And it's
that's happened at Tannadice as well. I think last time we were in that group stage, I think it was just the Eddie Thompson, maybe the George Fox lower as well, but it was definitely just the lower tiers of the 2 stands, if it was even the 2 stands that were open for home fans.
You'll be lucky if you break 3,000 at them 2 games. They're Saturday the 12th of July they're home at Airdrie, Saturday the 19th of July away at Alloa, Tuesday the 22nd of July away to Bonnyrigg Rose, and Saturday the 26th of July at home to Montrose. You'll be lucky if you get 3,000 at the Airdrie and Montrose games.
Yeah.
Obviously, Airdrie are decently followed. The problem is the time of the year. Everyone's on their holidays.
That's it, isn't it?
Naturally, people aren't as up for it to go and watch these games. Your diehards will always go. But
personally, I think they should rehash the League Cup again because but back when it first started, I thought it was quite a good idea. I thought it was good. You've got these 4 games against sort of teams that you would never normally see, but 3 games, sorry. But I just think something needs to change because it's not capturing the imagination of fans. Fans aren't bothering to turn up, and really, if fans aren't bothering to turn up, what's the point? You know what I mean? That's the whole point: getting the fans in, getting exciting football played, getting people in the turnstiles. And I think they're definitely they must be looking at the crowds that they get through these games and thinking this needs to change. They really must do. And this is the best thing about United qualifying for Europe: the fact that we don't need to play in this group stage. Because, to be honest with you, living in Glasgow, I would struggle to make it through for home games against Montrose or Airdrie, purely and simply because is it worth travelling through to Tannadice to watch your side probably beat these teams?
I know. It's. I mean, I live in Dundee, and I'm still toying with the idea of whether or not I go to them. I mean, I wouldn't have. I definitely probably won't go to the 2 away games. I think I definitely wasn't going to go to the 2 away games until Bonnyrigg said that they'll move their games to Whitehill Welfare, and the only reason I'm going to go to that is purely because it's a stadium or a ground or whatever you want to call it that I likely will never get the chance to go to.
Yeah, it's another ground ticked off, isn't it? And it's one of these good wee grounds. It's sort of proper football. It'll be a wee standing room only kind of place, no seats probably.
So that'll be the reason why I go to that. But I mean, last season I think I went to all 4 of them, if I remember rightly. But the year before I didn't go to the 2 home games. I think I went to 1 away game. It was Bonnyrigg, surprisingly enough. And I think I went to 1 of the home games. But the year before I didn't go to any of them.
I don't think I went to any of them last season myself, actually. Just like you say, people are away on holiday, and I think I was on holiday at the time, and you're busy, you're working during the week. I'm sure we played a game midweek. I think it was maybe Falkirk we had last season, and I think we got beat off them last season, actually, in the League Cup group stage. But sort of thinking about the actual games themselves, you mentioned earlier on about about Steven Pressley, sorry. If he doesn't get the wins in this group stage, if he doesn't get you through, there'll be a lot of pressure on his back. Do you think he's going to get the results to get you through that group stage? Because it is quite tough, You lose your opening game, and then it's an uphill battle with 2 games left. You can find yourself in quite a tricky spot quite early on in that group.
I honestly don't have a clue. I honestly could not tell you if I think he'll get through. There's been years like last year where we came out and won every game at a canter, apart from one. I think we toiled a wee bit against Annan, but all the rest of the games we were battering teams.
You were scoring goals for fun.
The year before that, we beat Bonnyrigg, got beat away at Airdrie, but that was away. That was harder. We had Inverness and Airdrie. Inverness were off the back of a cup final, and Airdrie away, who had just got promoted. They had a good season that season.
They were a very good team that season. Played United off the park a couple of times.
They got beat away at Airdrie, and then we beat Dumbarton at home, I think, 3-1. And then we played Inverness on the last game, and it was on the telly. And I think we needed to win by 2 goals to go through, and we won 1-0 and went out. It's one of them ones where you don't really know until it gets all going. So I'm not always. I wouldn't want to sit here and make any predictions, because I could sit here and go, yeah, easy. We've got the hardest game at Dens. We've got Alloa and Bonnyrigg away in Montrose. We're winning 12 points, but more often than not, that's not actually what does happen.
Yeah. Looks easy on paper, but it never really works out that way in reality, does it?
No. So we'll move on from that, and hopefully when we get to them games, they'll move on quickly as well, and we'll move on to reacting to the 2025-2026 SPFL Premiership fixtures being released. So I'll let you take it away. What do you reckon of your start to the season?
I think we've got quite a tricky start to the season. Falkirk away, Hearts and Aberdeen at home, and then Dundee away. again, on paper, you're looking at that thinking Falkirk away, but they're a team that's just been promoted. They'll be lifting it'll be flag day for them when we play them at the Falkirk Stadium on the Sunday, so they'll be wanting to sort of put on a performance to sort of get their fans excited for their return to the Premier League for the first time in, what is it, 11 or 12 years since they were last in the Premier League. So that's, I think it's always a potential for a bit of a beating, unfortunately, when you get playing the team that's just promoted. But again, no disrespect to Falkirk, we should be beating them, but it's not always that easy. Sort of following on from them, Hearts at home on the Saturday after, on the 9th of August. A team that's had a really, really poor season last season. They'll be looking to bounce back and sort of push for the top six at least, and probably those European spots as well. Aberdeen, the best Aberdeen team in history last season, so will they reenact that performance sort of earlier on this season? Who knows, but it'll be a tough one anyway. But we certainly seem to have got the better over them in the last couple of games. I know that the second last time we played them last season, it was 2-0 ahead up at Pittodrie, and then we blew it and ended up only getting a point. But I think Aberdeen, they certainly aren't the team that they started off to be last season. But again, they're a team that have got a bit of money behind them, so will improve and will want to. And then sort of that last game in August against you at Dundee at Dens, that will be a tough one. The derbies, it's one of these funny things that I've said to you sort of off podcast. When I first started going to the football, it was that 2009-10 season, and Dundee weren't even in the league. But we played you in a friendly that season. I think it was 3-1 United. And for all my sort of time going to watch football, United have always cantered over Dundee. So it's just ingrained into my mind that United will beat Dundee, and that there's just not a fear there. But we've seen the last game at Tannadice, the teams, I would say what's between the teams is probably less than what it has been sort of in years gone by. But it really depends on what the close season's like for both teams. We've been signing a few players, strengthening our squad. You have been signing a few players that you will hope to sort of will bring a bit of strength to your squad. So it's kind of hard to call, and like any derby, it'll probably just be decided on the day. You know what I mean? Form goes out the window. It's just one of these ones. It's whoever's got the bigger bottle, really.
And from that wee dialogue there, listeners, you'll hear that Martin is an arrogant bastard.
Yeah, can you blame me?
So, well, I mean, I was thinking that we had a tough start, but you know what? I reckon your guys has got a harder start.
I think it is. It's just that game at Falkirk. You're looking at that, and if that game against Falkirk is 6 or 7 games into the season, you're looking at that thinking, right, that's 3 points. Should be 3 points, no bother. But like I say, they'll be wanting to put on a show. First game back, I would imagine they'll pack out the home end.
Well, that's what I was going to say to you. I think this might be what you're about to say, but they've been. I don't know how true this is. I think it is true. I'm sure I've seen it from like the Daily Record or whatever on Twitter, that they've been selling season tickets in the away end.
Mm-hmm. Well, that isn't actually what I was going to say, but it kind of ties into that. I don't know if there's any truth in this, but apparently they had a temporary stand put up at the side of their stadium at some point in the past, and apparently that's coming up. That's going to be a thing again next season. So maybe they're selling, I don't know, maybe they're selling season tickets in half of that away end, or maybe the full away end and just giving away fans that temporary stand. I don't know. Would they want to only give Celtic and Rangers a temporary stand when they could cash in on them coming to town? I don't know, but yeah, like I say, that game will be an absolute sellout in the home end. I would imagine that'll be a great atmosphere on both ends. So, could go either way. You'd like to see United win it, and you'd like to think that we'd win it, but it doesn't always happen that way, does it?
I think I definitely said it in the last podcast that when we found out that we were playing United at Tannadice in the first game of the season, United newly promoted, lifting their flag, etc., etc., you just knew Dundee are never going to win that game. The promoted team often seem to draw the game, more often than not, but they never usually lose. And I think that could be a problem for United on that opening day.
It could be.
I think if I was to call it now, based on United of last season, they've obviously lost players, they've signed players, and they'll sign more players before then. Based on United from last season, I would think they should win that game, but the fact that it's their flag day, I reckon a draw or a Falkirk win. But you never know. Suppose you never know. But yeah, it's a tricky opening, and then obviously you move on to playing Aberdeen and Hearts. But what I was going to say to you about that temporary stand, so when Falkirk Stadium first opened, from what I could remember, if any Falkirk fans, I doubt there will be, but if there are any Falkirk fans listening, they can correct me on this. When that stadium first opened, you had the main stand and you had the away stand, and I'm pretty sure they had temporary stands behind the goal and along the side where the camera would be. Now, they then built the stand behind the other goal, and before they got relegated, they had a temporary stand that ran the length of the pitch, and I'm pretty sure that half was home, half was away. It was split at the halfway line, but I could be wrong on that. I was never at Falkirk, because when Dundee got relegated in 2005, Falkirk got promoted, and that was when that stadium had been recently newly built. So they were in the Premier League for 5 years, I think it was. We were never in the Premier League again for that length of time, and then they got relegated. So it wasn't until they came back down that I got to go to that stadium to watch Dundee, and by the time I got there was only 3 stands. Obviously there was no need for a temporary stand when they're playing in the Championship. So I've never seen that there, but that would make sense. They would definitely make sense for them to do that, especially if they're selling away season tickets, should I say, in the away end, because see, when I think Falkirk on the first game of the season, if I was to think United, I would think, as if I was a United supporter, and thankfully I'm not, but if I was a United supporter, I would be thinking, brilliant, however many seats that stand holds, 2,000 or whatever, big United support through there, 2,000 behind the goal.
If you've got an away game, the first game of the season, you're selling it out.
You're selling it out, especially it's not
people
that
have been
far
devoid
away.
of club football for the whole summer. You're selling it out, and they bother out.
But I just can't see that if they're selling, they were selling out Falkirk Stadium last season in the Championship, and they were having to split that in half. So they'll definitely be doing that. So you're only getting half that stand already.
Yeah.
And that's then going to make
a ballot in the first place.
A ballot. Shite, is it? So
it's the way it is.
So yeah.
I mean, you never know. They might be that desperate for capacity. They might bring the hot tub back. I don't know if you remember that hot tub. Falkirk fans can sit in the hot tub with their speedos on and watch again.
Fucking hell. Yeah. So what is it? Is it Aberdeen then Hearts, or Hearts then Aberdeen after
It's
that?
Hearts at home, then Aberdeen at home, and the concern is, and I hate to sound doom and gloom, but you're always sort of hoping for the best, planning for the worst. If we do slip up on that opening day, and let's say, worst case scenario, hopefully only get a point, we've then got potentially 2 very tough games at Tannadice that you'd like to think we'd compete in, obviously, but Hearts, like I say, they'll be looking to strengthen quite considerably on last season. Aberdeen, they'll be looking to consolidate, especially given the fact that they've got guaranteed European football up until November with this Conference League group stage at least. You know what I mean? They'll be wanting to expand the size of their squad, spend a good bit of money. So if the worst thing happens on opening day, we could be looking at sort of going into that derby with 1 point, which I've got no doubt won't be the case, but that would be an absolutely disastrous start for us. But it's one of the many things that could play out. I pray that it doesn't.
Well, you could be going into it with 1 point. We could be going into it with 0 points, because we start off with a Sunday lunchtime or Sunday 3 o'clock game at home to Hibs. Now, the only positive about that, if you're seeing the same Hibs as last season, is that it's right off the back of a European game for them.
Yeah.
Now, the non-Old Firm teams in Europe that have went into the Conference League group, i.e. Aberdeen and Hearts, the season after have tended to struggle.
Yeah.
Hopefully that, obviously Hibs aren't in that bracket, but they're coming off a European game. You've got to hope that they'll be tired. We've picked up a bit of momentum through the League Cup, whatever. We're then away to Rangers and Kilmarnock. Now, I have a sneaking feeling that Kilmarnock are not going to be very good next season. I don't know why, but some of their signings are not filling me with very much confidence if I was a Kilmarnock supporter.
No, I think they've been fairly steady over the last few years with McKenna's being there. He's certainly steadied the ship with them and has got them doing some sort of not bad football after Steve Clark left. Respectable positions in the league for them. But I think when McKenna's going, I think they're going to struggle a bit. I'm not saying they'll get relegated, but I think they will struggle and will need to sort of reshuffle the pack and re-steady the ship now that they've lost their man.
Yeah, and Stuart Kettlewell, I mean, I'm going to be really honest with you. I think he's an absolute fucking helmet.
Yeah.
Right? He loves the Sim Division voice, does he?
Yeah, he
That's
does.
Stuart Kettlewell.
I think he does a wee bit. He's got a bit of an ego on him, to be honest with you.
Yeah, he just talks and talks and talks. I mean, if I had played for him, I'd be bored after about 5 minutes. So yeah, they've seen Tiffany. They put up that photo the other day where it was like him, and then all his sign-ins, and there was like 6 or 7 of them, and Tiffany was one of them. Now Tiffany, from experience of watching him pretty much every week for the past 2 seasons, is one of the players where if he's on his day, I think we said this the last time.
You
if
said
he's
that
on his day,
we touched on
he's
it.
a player.
Yeah.
If he's not on his day, he's shite. And I argue
well, that's the thing. United were linked to him, and we did speak about that. And you said very much that he was too inconsistent, and that put me off because when you're a club like United and Dundee, you're wanting players that are consistent and are going to deliver for you every week. So it's no surprise if that's the case with him that he's at Kilmarnock, where he can maybe get away with being a bit more inconsistent now and then.
He said something about Rugby Park being a great place to play. Playing on that AstroTurf every week.
AstroTurf, yeah. Mind you, will they not have to get rid of that AstroTurf in a couple? Is that the season after next season, is it?
Well, I was under the impression that this was the last season and teams that get promoted have got a grace period, but Livingston are putting a new one in.
Are they?
So
they'll probably be trying to fight to get the catch.
Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
It's a very, very strange one, but
it's
Kilmarnock away, and then the derby on the Saturday the 30th. Now, obviously, that'll take care of itself. Is it Dens for the first Dundee got the first home derby for the first time in a while? Eddie Thompson being on the SPL board, wink wink. Anyway, I've got the fixtures up here, and one of the things I did notice going obviously into the season was, and I know this is a small thing, but it gets right on my nerves. Rather than having a Boxing Day game, we're playing on Saturday the 27th.
Yeah.
Rather than having a 1st or 2nd of January game, we're playing on Saturday the 3rd.
That annoys me.
Why? Why can't we just have a Boxing Day game? Like, that's when you want to leave the house because you didn't want to be at a family party or whatever, and you want to go to the football.
Totally. I'm a total sort of traditionalist in that sense. If it was up to me, every game would be a Saturday at 3 o'clock. Maybe a wee Tuesday or Wednesday night game in there. But I think, you've got the festive fixtures, and it was always a thing, the New Year's Day derby kind of. And for whatever reason, I've got no doubt it's got something to do with Sky Sports or some television company, whoever's going to be broadcasting that derby. Maybe conflicting games that are going on down south, because I think they still have the games on New Year's Day, I think. But it's just the way it is. The sort of traditions of the New Year's Day games and the Boxing Day games seem to be a thing of the past now.
I'm pretty sure that the English Premier League don't have any games on Boxing Day either. I'm sure I read that just before the Scottish fixtures got announced. The English ones were, and they were all saying that it was only the EFL that was going to be on the Boxing Day.
It's probably got something to do with the TV and money, probably.
Well, now you say that, the Saturday the 3rd game could easily get moved to the Friday the 2nd at like late at night.
Yeah.
For the telly, but then I've not seen.
Yeah. I think if anything, it'll probably get moved to Sunday the 4th. Sunday the 4th at 12 o'clock, because what I love a Sunday kick off at 12 o'clock or 12:30.
Well, there's another thing, because I don't know what Hearts and Hibs tend to play it between Christmas and New Year. I don't know if that's what they prefer to do, but that seems to be what's been happening. And then Rangers and Celtic play the same time as us. But hopefully it doesn't get moved to the Sunday. That would be even worse.
Yeah, it would be even worse. But so I wouldn't have put it past them. I really would not put it past them. And what about Dundee's run-in, sort of the last few games of the season? How's that looking? Because I'm looking at our fixtures, and it's not great, put it that way.
Well, you've got to take into consideration there's obviously the 5 split games, but
yeah.
The last 4 games we have are Saturday the 14th of March, Saturday the 21st of March, and then there must be an international break, and then it's Saturday the 4th of April, Saturday the 11th of April. Now that is United away, United at home, Hearts away, Celtic at home, Kilmarnock away. Where are our easy games, by the way? When are we playing Livingston?
Well, you're saying Celtic away, I can top that. We've got obviously Dundee away, Celtic at home, Rangers away, and then a nice wee one, the last home game before the split, Livy at home. So, I mean, a derby and then the 2 Old Firm teams consecutive weekends after it.
Mm.
Give us a break, eh? No, sorry, not consecutive weekends because we've got the international break in there, but consecutive Premier League fixtures. You know, who the hell came up with that one?
Oh, it's just a terrible.
Yeah,
Livingston and Falkirk. I think Falkirk might be okay, but what concerns me a wee bit about Falkirk, you've obviously got everything's rosy in the garden at Falkirk, and rightly so. They've done really well, back-to-back promotions. But what concerns me about them is that now I've not been keeping a massively close eye on them. Can't see that they've signed many players. I know that they've signed Scott Bain, they've signed Brian Graham, but they've came 2 divisions up and pretty much got the majority of the same players as they had in League One.
yeah, and
Now,
it's a big step up.
It's a big step up.
Into the Premier League.
Yeah,
Huge step
I
up.
mean, Livingston beat Ross County in that playoff. I didn't think a Premier League team from last season would have lost a Championship team. I was wrong. I think Ross County were just one playoff too many, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think if Dundee or St
They rode
Johnstone
their luck
had
against
played,
Partick a couple of seasons back. I think.
didn't have.
Big time. Yeah.
I think St Johnstone could have potentially beat Livingston in that playoff.
Yeah, could have.
They beat them in the Scottish Cup. So I don't know. I think it was maybe just because Ross County's their luck had run out more than anything else.
Yeah, that was time, is it?
But I can't see Livingston doing very well. I know that they've came up through the playoffs in the past with Martindale there. He wasn't the manager, but he was there, and they've went on to stay in the Premier League for a good few years. But I don't know. I just don't see them doing all that well. I could see Falkirk, Dundee, Cully, and Livingston being down there this season. And a special nod to potentially Motherwell as well.
Yeah, Motherwell, you never know. Towards the start of last season, I thought they were actually a no bad team, and I thought they were going to finish in the top 6 wasp, but they sort of petered out as the season went on. And again, they're a team that's played really well the last sort of decade and have had consistently sort of high finishes in the table, but they seem to be generally losing the quality from their squad, and I think they're far away from being relegated, but maybe a sort of, I don't know, maybe 10th place finish maybe for them this season.
See, Motherwell, I'm not saying this is a rule for every single year in the history of Motherwell Football Club, but from an outsider looking in, and somebody who doesn't pay a lot of attention to Motherwell, they seem to do this every year, right? They'll start the season steady, they'll have a bit of a bad run, they'll have a really good run, countered then by a really bad run, and they'll be heading towards the split on that bad run, and they'll pick up just enough amount of points to keep themselves away from trouble. And sometimes they'll sneak into the top 6. It's strange.
There was that season that we qualified for Europe. Tam Courts was the manager. The second season after we got promoted from our prolonged spell in the Championship 5 or 6 years ago, I think United and Motherwell were sort of battling out for the 4th spot, I think it was. And I think between the two of us, between I think February or March and the end of the season, I think we'd only won about 2 or 3 games and would still manage to finish where we did. Obviously we qualified for Europe that season. I think that's how it went. But Motherwell, their form was just atrocious, but they never seemed to drop any league places because everybody around them had atrocious form.
Was that not the season where did they either draw or win in the last few minutes at Livingston? And I think it was maybe to equalise, and they went in through drawing, and Livingston never got in the top 6, and Motherwell did. And they'd only won one game or something, and God knows how many, and they managed to get into the top 6 purely because of one of their earlier season runs of form.
Yeah, I can't even remember, but it sounds about right, to be honest with you.
It's strange. I mean, they've been in the Premier League longer than I've been alive.
Yeah.
So they're obviously doing something right, and Dundee should aspire to be that. So I'm hesitant to sit here taking the piss out of them, but I would love Dundee to have that consistency, but it just seems like they ride their luck. Sometimes, and one of the times it might run out.
They were in Champions League qualifiers back in the day when Rangers were in the lower leagues. Champions League qualifiers.
Is it Panathinaikos or something?
I think so, yeah.
Something like that. Anyway, we'll move on. So, looking forward a bit more to next season, obviously we've looked at the fixtures from the league, with the Premier Sports, United in Europe, etc. Summer signings. Who have United signed so far?
Well, we've signed 3 boys so far. 3 players that actually look quite decent, to be fair. The most recent signing was a guy called Panucci Kamara. We've got him from Crawley Town. He's an international player for Guinea-Bissau, so it's not like he's playing in the World Cup every 4 years, but he actually looks like a decent player. He's a midfielder, and I think whenever your club signs somebody, they get a wee highlight reel on the go, and they're never going to show bad highlights, but he looks a very physical player, and a player that's got a good burst of pace and a lot of energy and a lot of strength about him, which is exactly what we need. You know, he played a lot for Crawley Town last season. I think he played 47 games last season, which I think is about 4 or 5 more than what Ross Docherty, Richard O'Dada and Craig Sibyl played for us last season combined. So what we missed last season was a midfielder who was consistently playing in midfield. Obviously we had Savelj. He never really missed a prolonged period of games through injury, but he did spend a lot of time at centre half to cover boys like Declan Gallagher and Ross Graham, who were out injured. So if we can get a full season out of this guy, you know, he could be the sort of the midfielder that we really need to fill in Ross Docherty's boots, I hope. We've also signed a guy from the Australian A-League, Zach Sapsford his name is, Western Sydney Wanderers, who finished 4th in the A-League last season. 40 odd games last season, 11 goals I think it was in the league. 3-year deal. I think he's quite a big, tall looking striker, but a bit of pace about him, good with the ball at his feet from what I've seen. So yeah, hopefully he'll be a good one to sort of maybe fill in Sam Dalby's shoes. A big sort of number 9 looking player who's got a bit of athleticism as well about him, who can move about the box and move about the pitch. He did win the Playmaker of the Year award last season, which I had to do a bit of research into to find out exactly what that meant. But that's basically, I think, determined by the number of assists you've got over the course of a season and votes from fans. What the fans are voting on, I don't know, but apparently that's what it is. The only concern is with him, and again, I hate to sound like a total misery, but he was a good striker in the Australian A-League. Now, not to sort of put that league down, but Adam Taggart is the joint 6th top goal scorer in that league. Only 3 goals behind the joint top 2. And
how did I know you were going to mention Adam Taggart?
Aye, United fans will remember he wasn't a particularly prolific striker at Tannadice, but that's Adam Taggart. You know, this guy isn't Adam Taggart, so you know, hopefully he does the business at Tannadice. And you know, sitting here looking at his highlights, I don't see any reason why he wouldn't. You know, we've got some good sort of forward going players, so if we can get the ball to him, hopefully he can get the ball in the back of the net. The third and final signing that we've done so far, and I will say before I talk about this guy, I was hoping that by now we'd have a few more signings made, given that we've got a European game in just over 4 weeks, but you know what, 4 weeks is a long time, is it? I've got no doubt that there's things on the go in the background that the fans don't know, that you know, there's signings going to be coming in the door.
Especially when you're playing a team from Luxembourg.
Aye, yeah, I suppose, given the fact that we're playing a team from Luxembourg, it maybe gives us a bit more time to prepare, because yeah, the squad we've got should be doing the business at the moment against them. But this guy that we've got here, Juri Lovu, we signed him from NK Istra, which are a Croatian team. Defender, 2-year deal, and he's 6'5", so he's another big guy, obviously a replacement for Declan Gallagher. Only 22 years old as well, so you're looking at that and hopefully thinking he's a player that's going to develop over his couple of years at Tannadice. And you know, if we can keep a hold of him, if he turns out to be a good player, great. If we can get a fee for him a couple of years in the future, make a bit of money, that'd be good as well. So yeah, 3 good players in the door so far that are sort of replacing players that we've lost, sort of direct replacements for Dalby, Gallagher, and probably Ross Docherty, I would say. So rebuilding that spine of the team that we need to have rebuilt quite badly. But yeah, sort of hopefully these guys do it. And yeah.
So I'll have a look through the retained list that Dundee have put up, because that makes my life so much easier. So talking about new signings, they've got confirmed Dre Wright and Paul Digby before today's recording of Monday. Since just before we started recording, they've also signed a boy called Emile Aqua, who was at Barrow for the past 2 seasons, 12 goals in 64 games. He is 6'3" striker. Based on him and Paul Digby, who they signed from Cambridge, he's a centre midfielder, it looks like they're wanting to fill their team full of giants.
Well, that could be it. A big striker next to Simon Murray, you know what I mean? A sort of big target man next to a nippy wee striker like Murray, that could be a good combination for you up front.
Well, it certainly seems like they're wanting to get a bit of height in their team based on last season when they must have been the smallest team in the league, especially in midfield. But moving on to, and Dre Wright, sorry, before we move on to who's still here and whatnot, Dre Wright's obviously a bit of a utility player. They've signed him from St Johnstone. So, I'll be interested to see. I've always quite liked Dre Wright, but
yeah, he was
it'll be interesting to see. They've definitely needed the right side, especially if Josh Mulligan doesn't sign a new deal, which, I mean, it's looking increasingly likely that he probably won't. He's not signed anywhere else, obviously, but he's not signed with us either, and there'll be Dundee fans who'll say throw money at him, give him anything he wants, keep him at all costs, blah blah blah. I would personally want him to sign, but at the same time, I'm not being held to fucking ransom by him either.
No,
I would say to him at some point, look, if you want to sign, you're signing now. If you don't want to sign and you want to go somewhere else, we're moving on, and pull the contract out from him, because we've got to look after ourselves. No Josh Mulligan.
Totally. You can't let players hold your team for ransom.
For as good a player as he is, I think he was obviously latterly last season he was playing in midfield. He's also played at right full back. It's looking like that's where Dre Wright's going to fit in. So they've obviously went out and signed somebody just in case. You've obviously got Ethan Ingram there as well. But based on the signing of Paul Digby, because they're going to have to sign more centre midfielders, they are going for enforcers, a bit of height. He's replacing Silla. Silla's left. But as well as having signed them three, they've also got 5 boys currently on trial. They have Kyle McGuinness, who left Kilmarnock in the summer, who has also played for Hibs and St Mirren. I think, based on what I know, Kyle McGuinness has had a bit of a hard time with injuries for the past few seasons, so he is right up Dundee Street in terms of signing policy. If he is laying in a hospital bed, Dundee will be interested in him. They're also looking at signing, or they've got on trial, Tommy McDermott, who was at Burnley, one of the clubs that Dundee are linked with. He's also played for Port Vale. Based on his Wikipedia page, he has played 16 games of professional football. 8 of them were for Salisbury, 4 of them were for Rochdale, and 2 of them were for Curzon Ashton. Now, he's only 20, he's a midfielder, and he could turn into being a good player, but I'm sick and tired of Dundee signing boys like that. I'd rather they went out and signed boys like Paul Digby, who have played hundreds of games of football, and at a decent level of football as well.
I think that's what Dundee need next season, you know. Like you touched on, there's a bit of sort of scepticism as to how Dundee are going to get on this season. A lot of people have got them tipped on to get relegated. I don't know. Personally, I doubt that, but, you know, we'll just have to wait and see. You need to be signing boys, I think, who've got a bit of experience, who, when the going gets tough, they'll get going and can dig their heels in and fight, I think, because you never know, the season could go well enough and you can get these young boys who are a bit more inexperienced and give them the game time, but you know, when relegation's knocking at the door, as we both know, you need players who've sort of been there and done that, so to say, that can just really beat it away. And
Definitely.
You tend not to get that with young players because they're young and they're inexperienced and they've never been in that situation.
Every single time Dundee have a manager who wants to do this, or they've got a regime in place who want to go down this route of signing out these young boys, usually they're on loan, so it doesn't even give you any value at the end of it, and they fill their team full of projects, is probably the best way to call them. Neil McCann was a classic for that. Fill their team full of projects, and then they get relegated. Why don't they do what Motherwell do, what St Mirren do, what Kilmarnock do? We spoke about Stephen Robinson the last time we recorded. Stephen Robinson goes out and he signs boys who have been around the block in Scotland, like your Mark O'Hara's, etc. And he goes and signs boys from down south who are decent enough footballers and know how to handle themselves. And what happens? They didn't get relegated.
You definitely need that good mix of experience and boys that are sort of just, they've been there and done it in the league and they can dig it out, and they know players that know the Scottish League. You know what I mean? It's all fair if you're a player that's came to Scotland and you're playing in a team that's doing well and you can express yourself, that's fine. But when you're in a relegation fight, your players need to know what it's all about. They need to know the sort of what it means to the club and the fans for getting relegated, what the league is about, what these teams are like. How do Motherwell play? How does St Mirren play? Are they a team of bruisers? I mean, your mind never rests. They were a massive team that just chucked the hammer at you. Your players need to know these teams and know how to play against them, because you can't afford to just keep on saying, "Oh, we'll get a win next week, or we'll pick up points next week." You need to be picking up points now. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And look, this boy Tommy McDermott, he might be a good player. You never know. But and I'd rather they went and signed Kyle McGuinness, because at least you know what Kyle McGuinness is. He might not be able to actually go onto the pitch and actually do it, but you at least know that he knows what he's up against when playing in the Scottish Premiership. But based on that, they've got 3 other trialists. All 3 of them are from Monterey. And if they're anything like the two boys that they've currently got, remember I said the boy Lopez will never be at Dens next season? The miracle has happened. He's in pre-season training with Dundee.
At Dens next season, is he?
You are, honestly, him and Cesar Garza. Cesar Garza isn't too bad. They didn't want to give the wee guys a lot of stick, because he's done well when he's played. If we get boys like Digby and everything in there play to the level that we expect them to play, I don't think Garza's going to contribute much. But Monterey's under 14s have sent us 3 more players to have a look over. So they're called Jorge or George Landeros, Jose Urias and Oscar Soto. Now, Landeros is a midfielder, apparently. Urias is also a midfielder, and Soto is a centre defender. Now, these 3 boys could be very good. They've apparently all been taken or given to us for trial from the under-23 Monterey team. Now, again, do you think Stephen Robinson would sign any of these 3 boys?
Probably not.
Exactly.
Not. But then again, these 3 boys could turn out to be really good players. You just don't know, and that's the thing. Yeah, they could turn out to be, but it's easy sitting here saying that. You just don't know. And are you taking that gamble? You know what I mean?
Well, I've seen Dundee take that gamble umpteen times, and as I've said, it never seems to work.
No.
So that's really why I'm sceptical, and I'd rather they went down the signing boys like Kyle McGuinness, release players from Scottish football, release players from down south in the lower leagues in England. I'm not talking like your Vanarama North or the Isthmian Premier League, but boys like for example, they're interested just now, according to Scott Burns. They're trying to get the boy Matthew Pennington, who's just left Blackpool. Decent level of football. He's played for Everton. He's played for other teams in England at a higher level than what Blackpool are playing at just now. That's the sort of boys that Dundee should be going for, in my opinion. And look, they might not be beautiful on the eye, but if they stay in the Premier League consistently every single season, and then do what St Mirren do. I mean, I feel like when I say this, I'm disrespecting Kilmarnock, Motherwell, St Mirren, and just calling them hammer throwers, and they're full of boys, bruisers, who are just punting the ball from one end of the pitch to the other, and it's like the floor is lava stuff. They may well be capable of doing that, but St Mirren are qualifying for Europe and getting 3 years in the top 6 in a row.
Yeah, St Mirren are doing it right, whatever they're doing off the park.
This is what I'm saying to you. This is what I'm saying to you. This is my big frustration. Whilst Dundee are going away and forming links with Monterey and Burnley and getting all their cast-offs, St Mirren are going away and Motherwell and Kilmarnock are going away and signing proper hardened professionals for like St Mirren today signed Liam Donnelly. Liam Donnelly's no outstanding football player, but he knows his way around.
Exactly. He's a simple and effective signing.
Yeah.
Nothing fancy, but you'll get the job done.
Yeah. So anyway, before I go and lose my mind, we'll move on. Looking forward to this weekend's friendlies. I think Dundee are away to Arbroath, which I'll not be attending, but you could get a wee train day. I'm sure there'll be plenty of Dundee fans heading along there on the train, hoping for some good weather. They get their day out.
And United, we're away up to Glee Park this weekend on Saturday. Again, I'll not be going up to that. But I would imagine there'll be plenty of United fans making the journey up the A90 to see United in action again. I would imagine it'll be a lot of the young boys, maybe the new signings that we've got, give them some minutes, but do you want to go risking them in games against Brecon when they might not be match fit? You know what I mean? But yeah, it's a nice wee way to start the season. It's a good wee game for Brecon. Sort of not a derby, but a fairly local team.
Yeah, fingers crossed for Brecon this season, because they're really needing to get out of that Highland League.
You'd like to see them back up.
I would love to see them back up in the league. And now that East Kilbride are out of the Lowland League, it might make the pyramid playoff when they play the Lowland League champs a wee bit more easier and a wee bit more kind. When the last one in the league they played Spartans, and I think they were very unlucky against Spartans. So fingers crossed for Brecon. Hopefully they do the business and get themselves out of that league. 2 years in a row they've lost that league on goal difference.
I've always liked seeing those sort of Angus teams do well for Montrose, Brecon and Arbroath. You know, maybe not so much Arbroath when we were in the league with them, but yeah, you don't want to see these teams having any sort of great misfortune.
No, definitely. All 4 of them, Montrose, Arbroath, Forfar, Brecon. Forfar and Brecon are not in the greatest of moments just now. Montrose and Arbroath doing well further up the league. So yeah, fingers crossed for all 4 of them. Hopefully they'll have good seasons. We'll finish off this week's podcast by something, by the way. I'm not taking any responsibility for this, for the people who are listening and thinking they 2 fucking idiots are going to be depressed on us by speaking about Scotland. But Martin insisted on it, so we're going to speak about it.
Well, why not? Well, we're at the game. We might as well touch on it. Hey,
Iceland.
What happened against Iceland, Dundee?
Iceland. Well, for a start, the boy scored the screamer, the first goal.
Aye, very good.
But then it just turned into a complete disaster class from that goalie. Slicker was his name, wasn't it?
Yeah, I never knew Langfield had a wee brother, but apparently he doesn't. He plays for Scotland and sits on the bench. Was it Ipswich he plays for? Ipswich that he's contracted under.
Never played a professional game of football until he come on for Scotland. I mean,
you feel for the kid, eh? You do, you know, to be stepping out in a Hampden, even though it was only a half full stadium. You know, making your Scotland debut in those circumstances, it's never easy for the guy, but he didn't cover himself in glory. But again, neither did a lot of the team. You know, you can sit and slate the goalie all you want. The defenders never done him any favours. The defenders really didn't do him any favours at all. I think the whole team really let themselves down. Maybe McTominay was a player who, for me, sort of stood out a wee bit as a player who looked a bit more energetic. But again, I just felt that he was getting played out of position, and that's something that of late, certainly since the Euros last season, I've had to criticise Steve Clarke on. And it's hard to criticise Clarke given the fact that he's taken us to 2 international competitions, but I just question the tactics sometimes. I really do. I just think the tactics are not attacking enough. And I know that you're limited when you're the international manager with the players that you've got. You can't just go signing players in positions that you need to strengthen. But I feel we could see more from the Scotland team if players were maybe utilised in better positions, and if different players were maybe utilised. One thing I've said about Steve Clarke for a long time is that personally I think he's got too many loyalties to certain players. But he's the manager, is he? He knows best, so yeah.
Yeah, I think, I've had plenty of arguments with other people about Steve Clarke. I mean, it's a hill I'm prepared to die on. I wouldn't have sacked Steve Clarke.
I wouldn't have sacked him, but I think it's one of these ones, who do you replace him with? In all honesty, I think Steve Clarke, it is time for him to maybe consider, you know, has he taken Scotland as far as he can? Personally, I cannot see him taking us to America. That's just my personal opinion, based on how Scotland have been since they qualified for the Euros. I think since it was a mathematical certainty that we were going to Germany last year, our form just seems to have went off a cliff. And it did pick up a little bit after the Euros, but we were nothing like the team that we were in the qualifying campaign for Germany. And I would like to... I wouldn't like to see him sacked. I think that would be very harsh, but I would like to see him maybe put his hands up and say, you know what, it's been a great few years, that's my time, it's time to hand the reins over to somebody else. But like I say, who else? Who's it going to be?
Well, my kind of thoughts and feelings towards it is, one, who do you replace him with? There's no obvious candidates, and I know that question does annoy me sometimes, where you don't keep a manager who's not doing well purely because there's no obvious candidate.
Yeah, because you feel like you say that every time your team's without a manager, you're saying that, oh well, who's it going to be? Every time United have sacked a manager or talked about it, oh well, who's it going to be? And I'm sure it's the same at Dens.
Yeah. So I get that point of view, but I don't see anyone better equipped than Steve Clarke to take us to the World Cup.
See, I don't disagree with you. And that's the rock and hard place that I'm stuck between
See,
I'd like to see him sort of hang his boots up and respectfully leave, but at the same time, are we going to get a manager who's, at least with Steve Clarke in the post, we are somewhat stable and somewhat steady, you know what I mean? We could appoint a new manager that goes on and qualifies us for the American World Cup, America, Canada, Mexico, I should say, but then we could go and sack Steve Clarke, or he leaves, and we then get a manager who just, drives us right off that cliff, and we're totally murder for the next however many years, you know what I mean?
See, I think if you look over the course of Steve Clarke's reign as Scotland manager, there's so many periods like this where you'll have an unbelievable period and you genuinely go into every single match watching Scotland thinking, we're not going to lose today, and then they have the dip. And 9 times out of 10, the dip is in the June games. So if you think about it from when COVID, the COVID games, so there was 3 games every international break, and we had the Nations League games and we had the playoffs for the Euros in 2021, and they had really good form. They won the playoffs against Israel, they won the playoffs against Serbia, they went into the start of the World Cup qualifiers, and then they went in good form. They go into the Euros, don't do very well in the summer. Then they they go back into the World Cup qualifiers. They didn't do very well away in Denmark. Denmark were on a really good run, but then they pick up and they win however many games in a row. They had that 3-2 win against Israel. They beat Denmark at Hamden. Won away in Moldova. They won away in the Faroes. They won away in Austria. That was a big game. They won away in Austria. And then they should have had Ukraine and then Wales or Austria in the final. They should have had Ukraine in the semis of the World Cup playoffs in the March, and the Ukraine war breaks out. Wales beat Austria. We don't get to play against Ukraine until June. What happens? We get beat.
Yeah.
Then
I said it at the time, and I'll say it again. I think the referee, not taking away from how bad Scotland were that night, I'll maintain that the referee knew exactly who had to win that game.
Well, yeah.
Sitting with my tinfoil hat on, maybe.
I'm
but
not turning into an old firm supporter, but then they go into the Nations League. They win the Nations League, the Group B section they were in. The following year, they start off the European Championship qualifiers in March. Beat Cyprus, beat Spain. Spain's last competitive loss was that game. The June games, for the first time ever, we'll win that game away in Norway somehow. We'll come back and we'll play Georgia in a paddling pool and win. Then we'll come out of that come into the next season in the September. We'll win in Cyprus. I think we then lost to England in a friendly. We went across to Spain in October. How that goal doesn't stand is beyond me.
Yeah, that was daylight robbery, was it?
We were playing really well until then, and then a couple of mistakes, we got beat 2-0. And then since then, but you need to bear in mind some of the teams we were playing. We've played France, played England, played a couple of other ones. Holland, I think, were one of them later on in the season. And then we'll go into the Euros off the back of being in unbelievable form and poor form. Now, what you were saying earlier, we'll come out the Euros, we got beat away in Portugal, we lost somehow at Amden against Poland. We finished the Nations League on a high. Now these friendlies in March, who did we play in March? We played Greece in that playoff. Won away, got beat at home. And then we play these friendlies, not very good. Obviously the one in Liechtenstein, I think Dundee could beat Liechtenstein. So you've got that, right? But
one thing I will say about that Iceland game, I think it very much was a friendly. Hampden was half full, the atmosphere wasn't great, and to be honest with you, looking at the players, I think the players knew it was friendly as well. They didn't seem overly fussed about it, with the exception of a few players. The Scotland team on the night against Iceland, they looked as if they knew it was a friendly and that it wasn't a must-win game, which really annoys me, because friendly or not, I think you should be playing to win, but that's not always the case. We've seen it. We've all been there and seen it. We've all seen our team not perform the way they should do in a friendly.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's disappointing that it is, and you obviously want to win, and it's hugely disappointing to lose 3-1 at home at Iceland.
Yeah, nothing.
They're friendlies.
Yeah.
They're friendlies. Two of the goals that they scored, one of them was a screamer, and the other two were especially the third one was a bit of a howler for the goalie.
Yeah.
The other one was pretty shit defending and a goalie not taking charge of his 6-yard box.
Yeah.
But I mean, what I was going to lead on to in that bit of a rant that I was having was, I think, especially given the group we've got, there's every chance that you could have that upturn in form again from Steve Clark Scotland. He said publicly a wee while ago that his contract's up after the World Cup and he's going to let it run down and see what happens. I would not be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't do very well and didn't qualify. Would be what I would expect to happen. But what I'm saying is that I would not be surprised if they came into them games in September, October, November, all guns blazing and done very well. Now they're starting away in Denmark, which is a difficult game, and then they're away to Belarus. Denmark and Greece are going to be hard games. You would expect them to take 6 points off Belarus, but Denmark and Greece are going to be difficult, as proved by Greece in March. But I don't think it's out with the possibility of Scotland to go in there and maybe finish second and get a playoff. Now, that would be a fucking nightmare because then you're having to wait until March before you can book anything. But I think Steve Clark can qualify for that World Cup. If he doesn't, I wouldn't be surprised either, but I think he should at least be given the chance.
I mean, you look at the team we've got, and you know what, maybe I was jumping the gun earlier on saying that I'd like him to walk. That's maybe not entirely true. You know, one more qualifying campaign, what a way to end his Scotland career, having taken us to America, Canada and Mexico in the World Cup. But, you know, I'm just looking at that lineup from the Iceland game. We've not got a bad team. You know, you look at that we had George Hurst up front, you know, a young guy who will only get better in my opinion. The midfield we had against Iceland, John McGinn, who's playing really well at a really good Aston Villa team, Lewis Ferguson doing very good at Bologna, and you've got the other two boys in the midfield who've just won the league with Napoli. You know, Scott McTominay, obviously. What more do you need to say about the guy? And even the back, you know, the defenders we had in that game. You've got boys like Robertson still playing at a great level, winning Premier Leagues in England. Kieran Tierney back at Celtic, you know, he'll be getting consistent games, on form, confidence. John Souttar, you know, playing at Rangers again, you know, they'll be a top 2 team. He should be playing with confidence every week. Hopefully that can feed through to Scotland. So we do have a good team there that's capable of qualifying, I think, but we just need to get the tactics right. And that, I think, is Steve Clark's. For me, it's the biggest bugbear with Steve Clark. For me, he can just be a little too negative at times, and I would just love to see maybe 2 strikers starting. You know, real attacking football, fast-flowing football that maybe goes through the middle a bit more. Because I feel that Scotland always try and get the ball out wide, and it's a funny. Scotland have got a funny system to play. I feel that every time I go and watch United, you look at United and you look at the team they're playing against, you can always see the system they're playing. But for whatever reason, when I'm watching Scotland, I can never quite put my finger on what's going on with the Scotland team. It just seems to be 11 boys who are passing the ball about, and it's worked, you know what I mean? When the 11 boys were passing the ball about in the qualifying campaign for the German Euros, you know, it was absolutely brilliant. But there are times I'm just sitting thinking, what's our game here, eh?
I know. You need to throw in the mix. They've got Hickey coming back.
Yeah.
Hopefully Doak will get himself back fit for the qualifiers.
Mm-hmm.
I think Steve Clark was so set on the 3 centre-halves with Tierney being the left side of that and Robertson on the left side of the back 5. And then Ben Doak almost forced him to change and go 4 at the back. But I think his problem was in the March playoffs and then the one there where he actually went back to the 5. I don't think Scotland can play a 4 at the back if they've not got Doak, because he's effectively playing either Ferguson or McTominay wide right and McGinn wide left, and for as good as they 3 are, they're no wingers.
No, they're not.
So you're totally taking away all their attributes, their good attributes, to use us. And in the Cyprus game, he went back to the 5 at the back. Now, in my opinion, it didn't go well that night, but in my opinion, that was the right thing to do, and if he was to have his time again, I would tell him to do exactly the same thing. Because unless you've got a boy like Doak, there's no point in playing wingers. Because they're boys like McGinn and McTominay and Ferguson, they're no wingers.
No.
As far as I'm aware, McTominay's been playing off the striker in Napoli.
He has been.
So play him where he's effective. Like, McTominay's best player we've got. Play him in his position. Didn't play him on the right of a midfield four.
And you look at his record, you know, how many goals has he scored from that position? You know, the goals against Spain have came from sort of central positions. Certainly the second one, he's hit the ball on the half volley from just outside the box in the middle of the park. His goal against Switzerland in the Euros, he's been in a central position. You didn't want him out wide. You want him sort of just outside the box in the middle of the park where he can get a shot away or maybe get a good pass into the box. He's really effective there. So I'm looking forward to seeing him getting played in a more central role again where he's been playing for Napoli, because you look at his goal scoring record, he seems to score every game for Scotland that he's getting played in his position.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed. So, fingers crossed we take that positivity that I've had into the September games. We take 6 points and we get ourselves off to America next year.
One more thing to touch on about those two Scotland friendlies. Should Simon Murray have had a chance in those two games?
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think so.
Why not?
Based on his age.
What I mean? I suppose he's older, but yeah, why not? I think he's a good enough player, and if you're good enough, you know, age isn't a concern. Even if it is only for a couple of games, give him a chance, you know what I mean?
I get that. I do get that argument. I just think that even if he was about 2 or 3 years younger, I would have maybe thrown him in, because then you've got a cycle of a World Cup in him. But I mean, he's clearly wanting to get the boy Hurst up and running in this.
Yeah.
If he didn't have him, I think he maybe would have called him up. But because he's got Dykes, he's got Conway, who he's calling up regularly now. He's got Adams, and now he's got Hurst. I think he's probably wanting to get Hurst minutes integrated into the squad, playing off his, because I mean the Cyprus game especially. It was quite clear that the tactic was to leather the ball up to him and play off him. Now, the problem was that there was nobody around them to play off him. But that was clearly one of the things they were aiming to do. So I think if Hurst wasn't there, he might have had a chance. But to be honest with you, as much as I would have loved Simon Murray to get a cap for Scotland, I think he's probably done the right thing, calling him up.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. Like you say, what's the point in bringing a player up? I've never looked at it through that lens, but what is the point in bringing a guy into the squad who's maybe not got, you know, the years left to qualify us for the next campaign and then get to the World Cup? So I do see that point.
Anyway, that was a great episode. We'll be back next week. Thank you very much for listening, and have a lovely week.
Thank you.